So I guess on that subject of the kind of US-UK divide and talking about stuff that's been happening in the US, I imagine you guys have seen what happened with Mike Todd in his church. What's his church called?
Transformation Church.
Transformation Church.
In Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah. To be honest, straight off the bat, I saw the man did a to his and I closed it.
Hold on, so you didn't even watch the...
Didn't watch it. I haven't read nothing about it.
Gosh.
I didn't want to see nothing to do with it. So I just, obviously I heard, I think he was trying to, I don't know what the context of the sermon was that he was preaching. Maybe you could tell me, but I think he was
Mark 20.
Yeah.
What was he talking about?
Jesus spitting in the mud and wiping it on the blind man's face, eyes to give him sight. And his point was basically vision can receiving vision from God can get nasty, was his point. And so, yeah, I mean.
So he defecated on his hand and wiped it in his boy's face.
It was crazy because I was watching it. Because people, I think I got home. You know when you're kind of late to the party, so everyone was like, Mike Todd is crazy. Like can't defend my boy anymore. So I started watching the videos. I thought, okay, just spat on his hand, and then maybe pretend he was gonna put it in his face, and then stab him like a big kind of punchline. Yeah. So then he actually spits in his hand, and I'm like. And he spits in his hand again.
This is not spit. And he semi vomits into the palm of his hand.
And then he wipes his hand
spreads
together.
It.
Then he puts it on his face.
Like Dulux paint.
And then he's like, no, it's not enough. And he just massages his whole hand into the guy's face.
Right.
And as he pulls away, you can actually see. Oh.
Well, you can actually see the.
Yeah, it's stringy. It's stringy. It's stringy.
It's
He's moving mad.
That volunteer. Who checked on that volunteer?
It's real spit. And then my guy's saying, what was the point he made after about like you guys are even like cringing, like, see, this is how, receiving faith from God can get nasty. You don't have the faith that you need to see. And I'm like,
right.
What's that even got to do with the actual text? But it is what it is. But I was just, that was too much for me.
I don't know, again, that's the thing. I don't really know his ministry too tough, but I feel like he's courted some controversy previously. Or has he generally been like fairly straight line, not been in the news too much?
No, I think he is like his preaching style is very much like he uses props quite a bit.
There's that clip of him almost wading in the water. Do you remember one? I don't know the message, but I remember seeing a stage and like the same stage. And is it like rain? It's like raining. Like so obviously there's water coming down on the church onto the stage. I know what message he's preaching, but like obviously he's embracing it. He's almost like, and I'm imagining it's like what. I'm assuming blessings. I don't know. Guess.
I thought that was amazing.
As in like a theatrical.
He's wet. He's soaking. He's dripping.
Not many churches can do that. Like step your production game. Why are you hating on Mike? Like, don't be angry that you can't wet your mic. I thought, but that's him basically.
Right.
He loves kind of like the big punchline. The powerful story. But yeah, this was a.
But why do you think he's inclined to kind of preach and teach in that way?
In his apology video, he was talking about.
He apologized for it.
He kind of didn't. He apologized. He said something like, "Oh, watching it back, it was a step too far." He said, "I'm really passionate about teaching God's word, so I try and use kind of any medium I can to really emphasize my points." Right. So I think he's really tying that in with like, okay, Jesus heals this man that was blind with a spit. Yeah. I really want to kind of show that to you in a way that so you can actually feel it. Get the context, understand how difficult it would have been. And the faith needed to receive healing. So I don't know. I feel like I'm defending this man. Go on, Mike.
Talk.
But yeah, so I think that's his aim. Of course, as someone who's preaching, it can be a distraction, especially to the watching world, thinking, "What is wrong with this man? Like what's wrong with you?" So yeah, that video was too much. Yeah.
And to be like, however well-meaning, even obviously if that's the reasoning, so. He wants to communicate how difficult it was to even have a faith that led to being healed from your blindness. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's exactly what's happening in the text.
That's
Christ uses that means to heal a man. He's actually healing someone of a condition. You're not healing anyone by what you're doing. You're not Christ. I mean, obviously, look, I get all good intentions, but fundamentally. What are you doing?
What's wrong with you?
What are you doing?
What's wrong with you?
Because in a sense, you almost have to question what's Christ doing. Yeah. Because I almost find myself saying, "Oh, right, what is this guy doing?" But actually, you know what Christ does. but they're not the same. Christ does use spittle to mud, and I think he's referred to as spittle to heal a man's eyes as the means used to heal a man's eyes.
Yeah.
His way, why Christ does that, there's theory, speculation. I've heard even connections to traditions and the view of mud, even how true they are. God knows, only God knows. But Matt Todd isn't God, so to assume that,
replicate that.
if you're able to replicate that, and fundamentally you're not healing a man. I would even more maybe I'll give more grace. Probably not, but maybe the man was actually blind. This is some logic, but it wasn't even that.
So my guy was on stage fully seeing.
I think he had his eyes closed. The guy in the video have his eyes closed.
Yeah, he had his eyes closed.
I think the guy in the video had his eyes closed. Almost replicate that. He's blind in it. Strange. But yeah, it's I don't. I'm just trying to think of the initial conversation of, hey bro, I need you to,
I need to volunteer for me.
Just stand on the stage, close your eyes. Like, I don't know. Do you tell him that I'm gonna spit in your face? Like,
does he do a COVID test before he doesn't spit on his face? In this time, you're doing that.
Man, it's fine.
It's
grace.
A man that's spitting in his hand and wiping
it in this pandemic
about COVID compliance. Let's be real. I don't know. As a pastor, preacher in training, I don't know. How did you kind of consider what you saw when he did that, and maybe some of his broader techniques and kind of stage use, theatrics, props? You with it? You not with it?
I mean, personally, props I feel like should be very limited, very, very limited, because it does. And I see it more and more with Mike Todd. It becomes more like a theater than an actual sermon where you're trying to convey truth. And maybe I feel harsh because I know I can think of lots of good preachers pretty much in every tradition and style, from your Reformed Tim Keller to your mega church TD Jakes, who can actually preach really well without props.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't think it's impossible to be an excellent communicator and not use props. You can do it. And so I tend to be a little bit more skeptical of the use of props. Mike Todd's this is the second time he's actually done it. The first time, I think, was like a couple of years ago, before he quote unquote blew on social media. He did it with mud on the same volunteer who's his little brother, actually. And so so he has this is in keeping with his style. Like Ejim said, I the fact that he was trying to play God for me was a big problem. Like, the big distinction between him and Jesus is that Jesus was claiming to be God. And I don't know, if someone's claiming to be God and then does a miracle, they can get away with some things that if Jesus did that and the man was still blind, I think people would be like, okay, what just happened? The way we were looking at Mike Todd too. But I remember seeing someone on social media who says something interesting, and this speaks to the pastoral issue as well. And they noted they asked the question, why didn't Mike Todd take the place of the blind man in this illustration?
Right.
If he wanted to convey this nastiness, rather than role playing Jesus Christ, why didn't he role play the blind man and get his little brother to do the spitting on his face?
Right.
So actually, which in a sense, and I mean, I don't want to, this is kind of going into hermeneutics, but in a sense would have been a more accurate place for him to take when trying to step into a biblical story. I think it's always dangerous to step into a Bible story and put yourself in the place of God.
Right.
If you're going to put yourself in anyone's place in a Bible story, it should probably be the one receiving the miracle, the sinner. You can keep going on. Maybe someone in the crowd, but you don't really want to play Jesus. And so I pastorally, I don't know. Honestly, I was worried. I feel like pastorally, that was, this might sound strong, team, borderline abusive to the congregation.
Abusive to the congregation. Abusive to the congregation, and not just that individual.
Not just an individual, to the congregation, because you're forced to wrestle with what this means for your place in the church. If your pastor is comfortable doing this in public, in front of, his live stream, I think hits about 90K viewers within a day. If he's comfortable doing that in front of that many people, what is he comfortable doing in private? What does it mean for your level of trust if you ever come to see him in a one-to-one setting? I don't know how that doesn't complicate the way the average congregant will interact with him, other than for them to rationalize it and basically say, here are all, here's the 6 reasons I'm okay with it. I just think pastorally, your priority has to be the congregants and the people you've been called to shepherd. And that has to take precedence over the effectiveness of a prop. Right. Which means even if you think it's a really good prop, you think actually this is going to complicate my relationship to the congregants and it's going to make things weird, then I have to prioritize them over what I think might be a really outstanding illustration. I don't think that I saw that in this case.
So I'm listening to this and I'm
That's
thinking,
a good point.
So what's the purpose behind him trying to, not necessarily even just this prop more generally, but like trying to, because Israel said he gets like 90K on a live stream. So there's something that is effective, at least in the way in which he approaches kind of giving these stories, approaches his kind of preaching, in a sense that it's garnering mass numbers. And, someone might turn around and say, actually, that's an indication of the failings of this guy as a preacher, that loads of people are flocking to hear him, but actually he's taking them down a path that's leading them down to destruction. Potentially, I don't know his ministry well enough, but if it's a case of, people love Mike Todd because they've got itching ears, and actually they're not hearing the truth of the gospel. Like, this is me like kind of, because I don't want to just kind of flat out condemn him because I don't know his ministry well enough, but that might be an indication that just because people are flocking in their droves to listen to him and hear him out, that might not be the indication that he's an effective gospel preacher necessarily. He just may be, like you say, a great storyteller. But even what we're learning from those stories is completely skewed. But I don't know if it's something in the age that we're in that makes him think even this is the kind of way that, because I think somebody asked us the question, like, how is social media the way in which preachers, pastors kind of give sermons and stuff like that? And I don't know if you've seen in your own experience where social media has kind of dominated what's being taught on a Sunday. So maybe rather than preaching out of the text, we're having all the topical sermons about, what was on the TL or what you were listening to on the Spaces or Clubhouse. So that's probably one to my mind where, thankfully, I would say, like, locally, I don't necessarily think I've had that problem, but I can imagine if you're somebody who's trying to like keep kind of young people listening in the church or kind of trying to get them into the church. I just drip culture. you know where I'm going. You know where I'm going. Big Pastor Toby. You know where I'm going. That's probably, do you know what? That's that's probably actually the biggest indication of how social media has impacted the way in which people interact with the church. His cult of personality has grown so big that it's weird. Like I've seen him recently on kind of other podcasts, and people haven't been prepared to kind of challenge him on the things that he's done or has been said to have done in his church or his teaching. But they've all just been consumed with so why are you all wearing all this, and what do you think it does for you in terms of like the mass attraction? So he's become like very quickly like a superstar. And nobody's really interrogated the message. And I guess the scary thing about his thing in particular is what you forget is there are a number of young people who've come out publicly and said, listen, the way in which kind of abuses have taken place.
Still.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It can be quickly covered.
It can be quickly covered. And he seems to be, in popular culture at least, thriving. Whereas the real challenge to what his cult of persona represents isn't really being brought by the church or the world. So it just seems like everybody's embracing him. So that's one way in which I feel like actually on reflection, social media is warping the way in which kind of people approach teaching or pastoring and stuff. I don't know. Do you guys think there's any other?
I think so. I think even just the fact that there's so much noise online. So any sort of, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a sermon, you really need the viral 2 minutes or 3 minutes.
Right.
That can be quickly shared. Like I'm sure not many people have probably heard the full sermon that Mike Todd kind of encourages people to listen to, but they've seen that 2-minute clip.
Right.
And that's the same for everyone else. Like everyone else is thinking, what can I say in less than 3 minutes?
Shock value.
Really like elicit a response. And I'm sure that would impact Mike Todd in his preparation of like, I'm sharing this story. How can I translate it in a way where people can actually
CD's gonna fun
this
like
actually has to be a clip in the podcast though.
Before you.
Nah, no worries.
no peas, man.
Yeah, they move everything around.
We gotta keep it here.
I'm happy for you to keep that, by the way, in the clip.
Get
That
me.
was-
I'll send you to.
I was genuinely scared.
No, sorry. What were you
But yeah,
saying?
so like, what can I do in 2-3 minutes to get a response? And and that would definitely affect pastors as well, especially someone like Mike Todd, who's actually seen in past that I've had 2 to 3 minute clips, whether it's about relationships or marriage, that has got like a massive viewing. So I have to do that a lot, and that is a growing temptation that churches will find, especially those who have massive like social media following.
Kind of preaching for the moment.
So trying to find, I don't think we do it as much, but remember back in the day, if like, I don't know, Kanye releases an album or Drake has a song, we would make it, Christianize it. Like, we don't really do that anymore, but we try and, what are people talking about? What are people talking about? And how can I, change it? So you might say, you want to roll with the big boys. Who's the big boys? God is the big boy. Like you do stuff like that. Like you know that, he's, they get the reference. And it's like,
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
What's that?
Perry remix. Have you not heard it?
God, I ain't heard that at all. They need to stop that.
That is so
But
jokes.
and of course, it's silly, but you know why people do it, so that you can get a view. But nah, that Spitgate thing really, really messed me up. And even when you just see a lot of what the world is saying, like, it really does create an offense and a distraction to the gospel primarily.
So, I was going to say, what have people been saying, I guess, who are outside of the church? Like, what's the response been?
Like, why are you spitting on people, bro? Like,
just dumbfounded.
Just dumbfounded. Don't have enough time to actually, even if someone says, it's a fantastic sermon though. Yeah. They don't have time to actually listen to it because, like, why are you spitting on people?
Right.
So you're missing completely the whole passage of why Christ heals the blind man, and you're distracted by this man that just spat on his little brother because he thought it was cool, which is just very, very strange. So I think we have to be mindful of that. Like, there is a watching world that have questions that are adverse to God. So the gospel's offensive. We don't need to now add our own spit on it.
Do you know, when I think about it, I think it's a good reminder of that kind of Paul's words where it's just saying like the foolishness of preaching is what God uses as an effective means of portraying the gospel. It's not with our own like words or eloquence, and I guess in Mike Todd's case, it's not with your theatrics and your props. It's very much the core content of the gospel that's going to win people and change lives, not rain coming from your rooftop or like spitting in a man's face. Like, that's not going to do anything other than maybe like a quick you got your 1 minute, 1.5 minute clip, and ultimately people are just left even more confused about what you were trying to convey. Now, in some sense, there may be because it's elicited that reaction in you, right, where it's like, wait, what was Jesus doing here? So it has maybe some benefit to somebody who has that inquiring mind. Yeah. But the flip side is a lot of people will just walk away confused and disgusted. Yeah. And that does just nothing for a promulgation of the gospel. I don't know, man. It was a weird thing to hear him do. I just can't watch it. I don't think
it's disgusting.
It's actually just disgusting.
And I think Mary's point is helpful. And then, so, because you speaking about, so Mike Todd or content creators, how they use social media or how they're influenced by social media to produce, as it were, their content or even shape their preaching. But us as the consumers of social media and that preaching or that teaching, how social media and its I guess the format it's in, and I guess just the influence it has on our lives has to shape our interpretation of what's been of the content itself on social media. So even I would say sometimes you get you hear something like that is trending, and almost your first thought can be, what's Twitter saying about it? So you want to see what other people on Twitter are saying about it,
and then that shapes your
almost and you don't realize it, but you're actually trying to find a view that sounds good, right? And I get it. understand it, but ultimately, I think as Christians, you want to make sure before you even jump on the TL, you know what the biblical worldview is on whatever issue is being addressed,
Right.
because it's much more difficult job to then, having gone on social media, spent so much time scrolling through various views, violently expressed in terms which are even unpalatable, to even troll through that, have that sear your mind, and then now unlearn that through the filter of the Bible. That can be a very unnecessary journey,
Right.
with unnecessary harm done to your mind.
Right.
So sometimes even the way we consumed the information is so that geared towards social media led, that even that priority shows that we have sadly a lower view of actually how we're meant to test truth. I heard a preacher on Sunday give a very, very, very clear answer to a question that was, basically how do we protect ourselves and our church from false teachers? And very clearly, Christians have the Holy Spirit within them, who helps the Christian divide the truth, the word of God, and apply that to whatever's in front of them. So whatever's been taught from you, like the Bereans, great name, test the teaching against, the scriptures. And I guess we need to be, so when Todd comes, when next man comes, we're not phased because we know what the Bible says. And even if the world is like, oh man, Christians, we're unfazed, or at least we're grounded, because, we can just clearly say this is nonsense.
That's very helpful, and I guess it's not even just strictly applicable to what manner of teaching is. I guess every piece of content you consume is being able to have that filtered with a biblical lens, and not just necessarily being, because I see the impulse, even in me probably sometimes.
It's in me, yeah.
What's so and so saying about this?
And you got your people.
Yeah, you got your people.
You got your people.
Yeah. So you've joined factions where you know that this person tends to have this kind of response. It might be outrage, or it might be, they try to come across as more kind of deep thinking, contemplating, and stuff like that. And so you kind of find yourself falling in different corners of I'll probably say the Twitterverse. I don't know what Instagram is like, so I don't use it, but and that's what's kind of shaping your view on all of these like key cultural moments, key social moments. I don't know, like, in America, has there been a particularly has there been one kind of response that's been pretty consistent, or has there been differing views to the way in which he did that?
I love how Israel's become like our American correspondent.
Yeah, he literally is.
In America, what are they saying?
He needs an earpiece.
Yeah.
Get an earpiece.
And now too.
and now too.
What'd you say?
Black Berea's American correspondent. That's the official.
Let's roll with it.
BBUS.
I think it's been mixed. Most of the people I follow have been heavily opposed to it. And I think just given the brand and the crew that I roll with theologically, I'm not surprised. But I have seen folks who are defending it and essentially saying, okay, even if it was a bit too far, it's not as crazy as you guys are making it out to be. And the only arguments I've actually seen that have been maybe, the only arguments I've seen in general actually probably have to do with his reputation outside of that particular incident, and basically saying, hey, look at all the other stuff he's doing. Don't make it out to be like this is now definitive of his ministry. He's been giving money away, he's doing all these other stuff, all these other sermons are still good. And I hear that. I mean, as you can imagine, I'm not particularly convinced by that, but I'll divide it like this actually. Professionally, I think a lot of pastors that I follow have been opposed to it.
Right.
Most people who've been for it are not ministers that I've seen on social media. And I think that's actually probably a significant split there.
Why do you think, sorry, the lag hit me. I was just going to say, why do you think there is that dichotomy? Like, so why are people who might just be ordinarily congregants receiving it in a way that is more palatable, whereas people who might be in his position are going, nah, bro, you can't do that? What do you think is appealing to the person who's on the receiving end of the spit?
Oh my gosh.
No, go ahead.
For real. Um, let me get myself together. I I think most people who are arguing for him have been profoundly impacted by him. That's what my sense. They've watched the other sermons. They probably following Transformation Church for like a year and a half, 2 years, however long. You know, they've learned a lot of amazing things. They probably joined a small group that Transformation Church launched in like some city that they live in. And so there's like they're in, I'm trying to find a nice way to say this. Like they're already for him. And so this one incident, it will probably take more than that for them to say, actually, all of the good things I've received from him are now suspect. And while I think there are a lot of pastors who follow him and have been enjoying his stuff, I think most pastors are watching what he does from the vantage point of if they were a pastor, like how would this look? And I, you know, like honestly, I think his clout allows him to get away with more than what is even possible. Right. In a typical church, if they did that, the game would be over. But it's because he has platform that there's even this kind of debate and discussion. And because of his influence, it wouldn't, because I mean, this is a guess, but the churches I have direct relationships with, if the pastor did that in the service, it would be a whole different discussion. And I think other pastors are looking at that saying that he's got leeway that I don't have. And that's actually quite problematic.
He's got leeway. Okay, yeah, sorry. I see the point you're making there, but I was just, my video post was like, he's got leeway that I don't have. You shouldn't cover that either, by the way. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not even saying...
Yeah,
I'm not even saying those guys were saying, but I'm just saying, like, listen, don't, I guess, to the pastors, don't aspire necessarily to even have that level of clout or untouchability. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a degree to which actually the position he's in can be quite dangerous if that position is continually abused, etc. So that's not even something necessarily to aspire to, but I hear that.
And you're hoping I don't know, but he said, gave an apology. Maybe that was spurned by a discussion within the church. You're hoping that there is a sort of, accountability, whatever, fellow elders or whoever to be like, you know what, we recognize this was the wisest thing. As opposed to, because even if the fact that it was himself that came to that position, that's still slightly problematic. Because if he didn't, then what? Do you know what I mean? No sort of like correction to that. So yeah, I can definitely, I sort of can see why Israel's seen that divide between ministers and like laymen. Yeah.
I was thinking of a punny way to do that.
I've got a pun.
Have you got a pun? Run it then.
Phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
Spectacular.
Spectacular.
No, but because you said, do you know what I was even thinking? Because you said layman, I was thinking, how you gonna run spit layman? How you gonna get?
How you gonna get that?
How you gonna get that?
Yeah.
But we'll come back to it sometime.
Forget
that. Off
Spitiful.
Mike Todd.
He said spitiful.
It was.
Episode title.
Come on.
Episode title.